Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 3 of Raising Dion. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, on one front, we had the whole situation with Dion and Brayden. Obviously, now that he knows he has powers too, because he's never met anyone his own age with powers, and so obviously he immediately creates a bond and kinship, especially in the moment he finds out what Brayden can actually do. It's like, oh, cool. We get some answers about what he's capable of as well as the limitations of his abilities. So it seems he can make people with powers see stuff, but he can't push them. He can't compel them like he could anyone else. Like, oh, I want you to do this. I want you to say this. He can't do that to Dion, but he can make Dion see probably and potentially hear stuff that he normally wouldn't be able to. So that's interesting. Well, I say normally wouldn't be able to, just illusions or just by getting inside your head. So that's really interesting to know ahead of time. So it's like, right, like he has to be careful about how he can use his power against Dion. But it does bring up something like I brought up previously of like how scary and power that is, because if he can make you see stuff, that could be, he can create circumstances that could lead to some issues later on. He can make you not see something that's right in front of you, because he can basically bring you into what is essentially his mind palace, which he does later on with Dion. Basically, it's like, yo, this is the place I go to kind of escape and everything. But I love that, maybe it's because he is a kid and he hasn't completely learned how to control it yet, but he has has time, like, and stuff with, like, his dad and his mom, and it's great, but then, like, some of the stuff with his aunt creeps in, and then it kind of plays into what I thought. His aunt was, like, because the one episode we got introduced to her with, Charlotte, she was, like I brought up previously, she was all anti, like, oh, my brother was with the devil, with all that he was mixed up in, so, she, like, berated Brayden with a lot of that, too, so once again, whether he's the one that killed her, whether it was the crooked man that did it, or whether it's just a combination of the two that did it, either way, he says she died in front of him, so he might not have actually been the one to do it. The crooked man might have showed her like, oh, let me kill her for you, and like, oh, I did this. I saved you from that evil woman. Once again, why he doesn't really have an issue with this, even though it's the same thing that killed his dad, like, I don't know whether he doesn't realize that or what. Once again, maybe he's just so alone that it's like, regardless of what you did, because maybe his justification, and I think I've brought this up previously too, like maybe the justification is, oh, that wasn't me that did it. I was a part of him, but that was Pat. Pat was in control. He's the one that killed your, dad, because he sees Pat later on, but he doesn't have the reaction of like, oh, you killed my dad, I'm so mad at you. And it's not like, because the crooked man is like, oh, he's here, and so the whole point was like to push him slowly from the inside, like destroy Dion's group by breaking, like, I think it's like to break Dion little by little, because he knew how much seeing Pat would hurt. So it's like, oh, like that guy Pat, he's over here thinking about you, go see him. So because it does seem like Brayden is going out of his way to try and separate Dion from his friends, because he's been like, oh, what's this, the triangle of justice? It's like, nah, bad guys are, he's like, I'd rather be a Sith than a Jedi. He's like, but Siths are bad guys. He's, yeah, but bad guys have all the good lines. And I love that I don't know what it is, it's kind of adorable seeing a little kid doing a Bane impression, specifically a Tom Hardy Bane impression. Oh, I was burned in the dark. Which now I can never unhear that, because, like, obviously they lean into it for the Harley Quinn cartoon, so I can never unhear that now. It's just the bit that it is. But nevertheless, it's just like, I don't know, it's something cute about a kid doing a Bane impression. And it's just funny to know, like, right, that's going to be the cultural zeitgeist, like, general understanding. Like, even though Bane doesn't talk like that, only two things ever reference him talking like that. Dark Knight Rises and the Harley Quinn cartoon. So it's, once again, just always an interesting thing. But either way, it definitely seems like he's also trying to get Dion to lean into some of that bad habits of his. And I think that's going to be, he's going to try and push Dion to the dark side, to the point Dion pushes away all the people he cares about. And then he's kind of going to be standing alone. And in that moment is when Brayden's going to come in and, like, wreck shop type of situation. Pure speculation on my part, because I'm just curious, like, what's the bigger picture on, like, how to destroy Dion from the inside of his group. And I would assume it's just like, right, push him, like make him scare him, make him scare away all the people around him by making him lean into the dark side, or what. Just do whatever you can to ostracize Dion, because the point is to get him alone, because as long as he's got others around him, he's going to be stronger, because there's strength in numbers. But if he's alone, yes, he has all these powers, but given enough time, and Dion will let his guard down around Brayden, because he's like, nah, this is my good buddy, and he won't see it coming when Brayden strikes. I also I love Kwame being like, it is kind of what, because Nicole did say that he would be the one running things, and I love that he immediately like, yeah, I want you to like, you're gonna give this your all, blood, sweat, and tears. He's taking it so seriously. He's like, I'm not about to deal with any prima donnas, and I love that like Esperanza's like, Jesus, take the wheel, and he was like, Jesus can't save you now, and one of the kids is like, I thought that's what Jesus does. I'm like, legitimately made me laugh out loud. I was like, that's adorable. This is amazing how like immediate, like how serious he's taking this. It's like, no, like, you guys, I can make you stars. It's like, because I guess Kwame's bored out of his mind, so it's like, right, this is his project. I even love when Esperanza does her thing. Dion's like, didn't you ever like mess up? He's like, not to my remembrance. It's just like, yeah, if I messed up, I don't remember. All I remember is me being perfect every time. I'm like, I love you so much, Kwame. I love you. I love it, dude. You're so good. But I love like the whole like that little girl being like next with a question mark, and he's like next, and just I love that. And even at the end, he's just like, oh, I hate this song. Either it's because he never liked the song, or it's just because he has to listen to it over and over and over and over and over again. And I was curious what Jonathan's whole thing was going to be, and he was like, oh, I'm going to be your stage manager. I'm taking flames, pyro stuff, like all this stuff going off, and then like he has his sign, which the lights kind of blow and screw up and knocks off the J, and he's kind of like, yeah, and just kind of like, next, let's just, no. I didn't know that's what I guess Jonathan was always more interesting. I guess he's like, I can't sing, but I'm always like down for like the stage production stuff, so I love that. But it is sweet that Esperanza kind of goes on stage and she does it and she kills it, and you can tell it kind of rubs Brayden the wrong way, because it's like, right, Dion's wanting to spend time here rather than actually hang with him, because it's like, all right, I'm trying to get you away from your friends, but you're doubling down. Because he's like, yeah, I made a promise. He's like, why? Because I'm stupid. Triangle of justice. And it's like, yeah. But it's like, yeah, it means a lot to him. It's the foundation of like a big part of their friendship. So, but once again, to berate it and try and separate Dion's the whole point. So, on the flip side of things, I do love the whole Kat situation of her convincing Nicole about everything, because it's like, right, kind of telling her to trust Dion more, because Dion 2 years ago, that was the boy who was missing his father. Dion's becomes a very like sensible, sensitive young man. Like, the fact is, he can't handle it. It's you that can't really handle the whole like powered people thing, which is understandable. Once again, the Pat thing, and it's like, I don't want to put him through that. It's like, yeah, but are you more worried about putting Dion through it, or are you more worried about going through it yourself? It's like, yeah, because she's like, if Tevin was someone else, where she referred to him as Kevin last episode, which Nicole was like, Tevin. She's like, if it's, oh, it must be something special if you up there like correcting me on his name and everything. But yeah, like if Tevin was like a regular dude and no powers, you'd be all over this immediately. So she does sit down with Tevin and just, once again, just kind of unpackage at least some of her grievances, which he's like, yeah, I get it, but whoever hurt you, like, that wasn't me. I hope that you will give me the opportunity to earn your trust, you know? So, but she is also taking kickboxing lessons and stuff like that, because she wants to be prepared, because once again, it's like, I'm the mom in this situation. I got to protect my son from whatever comes. Like, yes, he's the one with the powers, but I still want to, I think it's that complicated thing too, of just like on a deeper level, we kind of talked about it a little bit. It's like, right, you don't have any powers. Like, it's like, how do I protect my superpowered son when I don't have powers? That's why powers scare the most, because it's like, if I had some of my own, I'd be able to defend my son, and I wouldn't be in a situation where my son needs to defend me. So I think that's where we kind of like run into a little bit of the issues there. So Suzanne is still running her test on Pat, trying to see whether or not he has powers or not, and then David's like, yep, came back negative. It's like, cool. He goes to Pat, he's like, actually, it didn't come back negative. And then like the soil, like, it's not enough for him to be like fully powered, but it's enough juice that his his powers, like, he even says it, like, right, it will always be a part of you, which, once again, kind of goes back to my point. Could it be that he's not, like, could he be secretly aiming that this whole thing is about getting power again, getting all his power back? I don't think so, but, you know, can't throw it out there. It's still within the realm of possibility. Because no matter what, that the Crooked Man will always be a part of him, which you could tell is a little disheartening to him, because it also proves what Nicole said, like, a lot of that is still in you, and this kind of proves it even more so. Like, right, you're not the clean slate you thought you were. Or maybe you actually are, but it's, you know, maybe because most of the Crooked Man took all the negative stuff out of you, so now, like I said, there's mainly just positive stuff in you, but it's still a fraction of that power, and if you ever became whole again, the Crooked Man combined with what's left inside of you, then he'd be back to his super villainous self again. But I thought it was interesting too how, like, David wanted to lie to Suzanne. It's like, this way is plausible deniability. His justification later on is interesting too, because the way Suzanne is running things, Bayana is like hemorrhaging a lot of money into all of this without any returns. Once again, he's the one pushing for the whole, like, right, we need to show results of, like, cool, we can replicate this whole power thing, and then we'll get Matt probably potentially, like, right, if we're in control of being able to replicate that, probably the thing is, we could sell superpowers to people. Maybe that's kind of the end result. That's always my conspiracy thing of, like, cool, some corporation or government wants access to people with powers. Yeah, you want to try and find a way to monopolize it so that you can be the one to distribute it. Whether you're like, we can give these powers to the Department of Defense to utilize and eventually sprinkle down into, like, a special group of superpowered soldiers, or give it to our military, whatever the case may be, you know, or just in general as a corporation make a profit off of selling abilities and powers. And obviously Pat gets brought back to the scene of the crime where he tried to kill Dion. And for him, it's like, all he feels is regret and shame being there. Plus, I feel the guy that's over here with, like, the weapon that's going to, like, neutralize me, if need be. But he touches the soil and he references whatever this isn't the Crooked Man. The Crooked Man just brought up what was there. He was like, there's something here that's been buried deep within that's ancient, kind of old and just filled with hate. And I'm like, so it begs the question, like, how does the Crooked Man know what's here? Like the Crooked Man, is it kind of like, I made a Lock and Key reference, is it kind of like the demons from Lock and Key, where it's like, we've been sealed away, like him coming, like, Pat just happened to be the unfortunate person, but like maybe on some shape, because I was almost wondering, like, because I was almost thinking, like, could it be that everyone has sentient powers, just his was the only one that managed to be sentient? Or was it not just, like, maybe that what it did created something inert in everyone else, where it just gives them a powers without it being its own sentient thing, except for Pat. Once again, I think Pat's is just, it meant, like, during all they did, like, probably, like, the electricity from Dion and everything, and just everything with the power, like, it did something, like, that energy dispersion, like, did something. It broke them, so now they're two separate beings, two sides to the same coin. But once again, just why is Pat's power like that and no one else, where it's literally its own entity? Like I said, I think maybe it just has to deal with the fact it's just the nature of the power, the nature of how he got them. Once again, whether or not anyone else got hit with multiple pellets during, like, the Aurora event, or was that just him? Like, but like I said, for it to know, like, there's some ancient stuff here, so, like, at every, like, it's what something was buried deep within the earth, and it's ancient and it's there. Like, why does the Crooked Man know about it? Did he sense it out? Is it something outside of them? This has to be connected to them in some shape or form. Maybe there's something that led to all the powers. Maybe a long time ago it came to Earth and it just got eroded over. Like, it's buried deep underground because centuries, maybe even millennia, it ended up, like, getting buried underground. But maybe it's been here the entire time, waiting for something akin to it, something of its ilk, something of its nature to awaken it, like the Crooked Man. You know, basic question, could anyone else with superpowers awaken, or is it just specifically the Crooked Man that can, because it is, like, a more electrical special ability? a lot of these reviews are just me like speculating and throwing out thoughts, just kind of like letting you know where my thought process is based on what we've watched. But that was really interesting, the confrontation where, like, hey, I guess I can't call you little man anymore, but it's like, no, I'm not the same. He's like, oh, I'm like Baron Zemo. I'm like, hey, I get that reference, and you're like the Thunderbolts. I'm only tangentially aware of the Thunderbolts because I've heard people be like, oh, I want to see the Thunderbolts in the MCU. Like, maybe this could be set up for potential. Yeah, but obviously I've no aversion of Baron Zemo because of Civil War and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But I was like, hey, some of the comic book references. I even saw at one point, I didn't see all of them, but I know one of the comics that Pat had was a Bloodshot comic, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Timing's interesting too because I was listening to a podcast where someone referenced Bloodshot as well, so I thought that was just kind of interesting timing. Nevertheless, but I'm sure for Dion it was a multitude of feelings he was feeling about being around Pat, because it was just like anger and fear and sadness all rolled in one, because he was like, he had his hands lit on fire to attack Pat. Pat was like, no, but that's not me. I'm the villain that turns good guy. Like, that's me. Which also is not a great example to use when it comes to Baron Zemo, because he helped out and stuff. I mean, he's probably more so specifically talking about comic stuff, but I'm also like, because I think the Thunderbolts is that they're a group of like people who are, some of them being villains, come together to become heroes. But I was like, Baron Zemo is kind of not the best example to use in the current continuity. At least you go just by the MCU alone, because you're like, yeah, he did go bad guy to somewhat helpful bad guy to just like, no, I'm still a bad guy. So. Luckily, Nicole got there in time, but she kind of lets it slip that she knew ahead of time, and obviously Dion was upset. But I do appreciate that they, like, she goes like, right, I am sorry I didn't tell you. It's just like, she's like, sometimes I try so hard to protect you and I end up kind of failing along the way. And it's like, I'm sorry I didn't tell you about the Pat thing. I should have. But he's like, right, if Pat's back, does that mean Dad's back? And she had to be, if your dad was back, he would have come home by now. But it's like, yeah, but nothing ever dies, right? Energy never dies. She's like, yeah, your dad's all around us. Like, he's here in the places where we remember him, and his energy's always around us. Because she's trying to ease him into the thing of notion of like, I don't want you to get your hopes up believing your dad will come back. Even if Pat did, that doesn't necessarily, we still don't understand how and why he, out of anyone that the Crooked Man, that being a part of the Crooked Man, or anyone that the Crooked Man absorbed, like, why he's back, so. And obviously Pat's on the raw end of things, because David's like, oh yeah, everything's going to smooth over. Like, Suzanne's going to see, like, we're on the right side of things. So Pat's just going to have to sit back and wait. And it's also like, right, I'll get you some new comics and stuff like that. He's like, oh yeah, sure, thanks. I'm curious, once again, Pat now knows, like, wait, I'm not powerless. I do have some fraction of power. But once again, does he have enough of his negative side in him, if any at all, that could make him go, now I want more power? Or is he really just done? Because he's lived, apparently, these past 2 years as just a regular person again, so. Which I'm curious, maybe they'll wait till later to really dive into, like, all that Pat was up to. Because, like, I don't know if they've really gone out of their way to verify his story about where he's been in that 2-year time frame. The fact we haven't really touched on that at all, but maybe we will. Maybe it's not going to be significant enough to really touch on, because it's just a sort of, oh, take him at his word, we'll tell you, not really show you thing. I don't know. I thought it was interesting, too, like, when Pat was being taken away, like, he stares at Braden, like, when they're, like, driving by. Maybe on some level he felt it, but he didn't know it, because it's like, right, there's my other half. Or does he know and he's just not saying anything? Because, once again, the way Braden was looking at him, it's like, I still don't know if that's because Braden's like, oh, I know you're the one that killed my dad. Or is it like, oh, you're the other part of this, you're the original Crooked. Like, what was that exchange about? Is it just because they felt each other? Because Pat doesn't have enough of the power to fully sense him, I think, but he probably felt something. He also never met Braden. He only met Braden's dad, so he knows what Braden's dad looks like, but he doesn't know what Braden looks like, or even that. I don't know if he knew that the farmer had a kid. I guess the trees and stuff like that, probably hid him away. It's like, not unless Brayden secretly used, well, because we don't know if he had access to like his power to make you see stuff back then. He could get inside your head with, you know, and well, because he could push his thoughts on you like he did Charlotte, but his powers probably weren't what they are now. So I was about to say, like, not unless he hid himself from Pat back then by making him see something that wasn't there, because it's like, right, Pat should have been able to see him as a superpower kid, like, but maybe it's like, right, he got his satisfaction from Brayden's dad, and just like after that, it's just kind of, I'm bouncing. I got what I need, I'm going. And he decided to leave Brayden knowing he was there, or maybe he didn't notice him. I don't know. That's kind of a lot of what I say in a lot of these reviews. I don't know. This is just pure speculation on my part. This is my thought process. But I didn't touch on it, but there is the whole Gary thing. He stumbled his way into the hole, and we see that the infection, once he got down there, started spreading. And because of the way Brayden's ability works, how it doesn't fully work on someone superpowered, I'm wondering if the same thing applies here. If you're superpowered, you can't get infected. Regular people can. So currently, that's out and about. Well, he's locked up again, but the only people who would be immune to that would be Dion and Pat. But because the reason why I'm saying that is because the plants were like reaching out to Dion and stuff, but it didn't like go out of its way to kind of like shoot its like seeds everywhere just to like infect him or anything. So, but once Nicole found out from Dion about all this, which I love cats, like, so you ever watch The Bachelor? I'm like, okay. Dion had to like finally tell his mom the truth, because it's like, yeah, Suzanne wants her to come down and investigate the hole as well. So, and I love that she's talking to it like it's Pat. She's like, right, I'm not afraid of monsters, and ends up proceeding to run into a monster. And we see the mutation, almost borderline Swamp Thing-esque transformation that Gary went through. You're like, oh, poor Gary. I legitimately, like I said, hope there's a cure for that. Hope it ain't just a tough break, and once it's going too far, there's no going back. Doesn't seem like necessarily like it's a super enhanced thing. It is just kind of like, oh, you become a, very like, well, I guess almost Poison Ivy-esque in a sense, but it's like, right, you're under control and you become very plant-like. It does, well, there is some enhanced ability because he jumped up the hole, so it's like, probably not like crazy superhuman strength, but like at least above an average human and some extended ability. But beyond that, we don't know if they have like straight up superpowers or not. It doesn't seem like it, but they just seem like enhanced humans that are now enhanced plant humans. So sadly, we see in the process that Nicole ends up getting one of those seeds in her hand. So she, like, unlike Gary, who immediately kind of, like, it starts showing, it seems like it's going to take its time with Nicole. Because, like, it seemed like Gary got hit more than once. Like, he got hit in the neck, and then it seemed like he got hit again, and that's what made him fall. So, very reminiscent of what happened to Pat. But Nicole only got one in her arm, so maybe it's going to take a little bit longer to really kick in. So, cool. We got at least one infected person out there. Once again, whether he can be infectious at that point and kind of spread it to others, we'll have to see. But because it's a pretty slow building of an army for the Crooked Man if he's only got one foot soldier right now. Once again, this is in one spot in Atlanta. There's supposed to be other holes around the world, so what's potentially sprouting up for those? Who knows? Maybe this is just supposed to be the starting point and eventually go around the world and gather up an army from the other holes, or maybe by doing it to this one place, it's affecting everywhere. Because there was conversation about fault lines and stuff like that, but like Suzanne was like, there hasn't been an earthquake here since 1916, so like it is having some like, I don't know if like on a tectonic level, maybe, like, but there's some stuff shifting on the ground because of all of this, which could be a big issue. Either way, it's definitely going to be really interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.